morning, and welcome to our tribute in honor of civil rights activist Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Dr. King has remained a consistent figure in our lives, and as presidents of BSU, we both recognize his tactics of nonviolence to achieve racial equality.
Martin Luther King Jr. was a historical black leader who was often regarded as the catalyst of the civil rights movement. Despite his pushing forward a message that was considered controversial at the time, he sacrificed his safety in order to gain rights for black Americans, later paving the way for civil rights protections for many other marginalized groups of people in society, including Latino Americans, the disabled, and more recently, the LGBT community.
He is a wonderful example of the nonviolent effort in America as a passionate way to stand up for your own beliefs. He had a unifying effect on America. King soberly upheld his beliefs with composed conviction despite facing immense adversity, and he vocalized the black struggle to spur change in American society.
Dr. King helped normalize black pride and fought against racism. Although there are still civil rights issues faced by many Americans, King provided hope and action. When we honor Dr. King's legacy and embrace the notion that marginalized groups matter, we grow stronger as a nation.
Today we hope to honor the legacy of Dr. King with dialogue on the importance of civil and human rights, activism, and being a positive agent of change. To begin our tribute, we want to welcome our good friend and peer, Ava Signorino.
It's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed guest. I admire Mayor Warren. Being Latina, I can't tell you how much it means to me to see a woman of color achieve such an influential position of political power, and to use that position to improve the lives of everyone in her community. Like many other cities, Rochester faces huge struggles. However, Mayor Warren leads Rochester with such passion and integrity and constantly strives to overcome those obstacles, to better our community and to promote her ideals and equality. Mayor Lovely Warren was sworn in as Rochester's 67th mayor in 2014. She's Rochester's first female mayor and only our second African-American mayor, not to mention the youngest mayor in recent history. She was born and raised in Rochester and is a graduate of Brighton High School. After graduating college, Mayor Warren earned a law degree from Union University. Prior to becoming mayor, she served as Rochester's City Council president, making her the youngest City Council president in Rochester's history. Her work in government and in the community has been recognized in the Democrat and Chronicle, the Rochester's Business Journal, and with the Black Heritage Pioneer Award. Mayor Warren's goals are to improve educational outcomes for city students, increase economic development, improve public safety and community police relations, and address the stark economic disparities that plague many parts of our city. She frequently visits the city schools to interact with students and encourage them to stay in school and fulfill their dreams. Mayor Warren's way of connecting with and reaching out to people is remarkable. In good times and times of tragedy, regardless of the time of day or night, she's ever present to the citizens of Rochester. She reassures us through her ideals, her leadership, and her tireless work. I was motivated to contact Mayor Lovely Warren for what she stands for all young people who aim to be great. In the spirit of Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr., she's a role model for everyone who aspires to a day of greater social justice and equality for all members of our community. I would like to thank Mayor Warren for taking the time to speak with us today. And now it's truly my honor to introduce the Mayor of Rochester, Mayor Lovely Warren.
Thank you so much, Ava, and let's give Ava a big round of applause, please. As well as the co-presidents of the BSU. I also want to acknowledge my partner in government and a great friend, Bill Maley, your town supervisor who's here. Let's give him a good round of applause. As well as your superintendent, Dr. McGowan. Thank you for allowing me to is good to be back in Brighton High. I was telling the people that walked me in today that I used to come here as a student in high school with my cousin who graduated from Brighton in 1995. The BSU students used to have a lock-in, and they allow students from all over the county to come and actually stay here overnight and experience this great school. So I wanted to just tell you how much Brighton High School meant to me. It was a time to get together with other students from across the county and really share a night of excitement for each of us. And so that is, I don't know if you still do that here, but wanted to tell you all thank you so very much for opening up your school to us when we were in high school. But to talk today about Dr. King, he was one of the greatest champions of justice in our nation's history. But as we look back on the battles for social justice that Dr. King waged, we must remember that he did not fight alone. He was standing on the shoulders of fighters who came before him and those that stood alongside him. He fought alongside people like Rosa Parks, Andrew Young, Jesse Jackson, and John Lewis. And he followed in the footsteps of great Rochesterians like our own Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony. Dr. King and these champions of civil rights fought selflessly for the freedoms that we enjoy today. They took on these fights knowing that the path ahead would not be easy. At times, their very lives were at risk. That's something that we sometimes forget when we think about the great civil rights heroes. The home of Frederick Douglass was burned down. Susan B. Anthony was arrested for casting an illegal vote. Dr. King was put in jail for holding a protest and was ultimately assassinated. But despite the personal risk, each of them pushed forward because they knew that we, as a nation, could do better. We could be better. They fought because they envisioned a brighter future for our country and had bigger dreams for their children and grandchildren. They made it possible for families like mine to succeed by the force of sheer willpower and tenacity and hard work. My grandfather was a sharecropper in rural South Carolina. And when he decided to move his family to Rochester, he was jailed because the landowner said that he owed them money. But he didn't. My grandfather went to work in the fields when he was 6 years old, and he never learned to read. My mother never finished high school. Instead, she opted to get her GED because her strong Southern dialect was a constant barrier, and other students teased her. But one thing my family believed in was hard work. They believed in education, and they believed in doing better by the next generation. I can still remember the way my grandfather would gather us up, me and my cousins and my sister around him, and have us read the Bible to him. Now I remember my grandmother who held rap sessions with us to talk about current events and the issues of the day. She wanted us to grow up to be strong women, empowered women, tenacious women. Their hard work paid off. I am named after my Aunt Lovely, who was the first person in my family to go to college and to earn her PhD. I have another cousin who is studying right now at the University of Rochester to become a medical doctor. And why is that significant? Because when my grandmother moved here back in 1964, the only job that she could get was working as a housekeeper at Strong Memorial Hospital in the University of Rochester. And she worked in those rooms and cleaned those rooms. And some 40, 50 years later, to have her grandchild be a medical student at that school is significant for our family. I was the first in my family to go to college, to go to law school, to earn a Juris Doctor. Today it's hard to fathom that all that work could have been for nothing. That no matter how hard my family tried to make life better for the next generation, the opportunities we could have been denied was because of the color of our skin and nothing else. That's why I am personally grateful for the work of Dr. Martin Luther King. Without him and others like him, I probably wouldn't be standing in front of you as the mayor of the city of Rochester. I am keenly aware that I stand on the shoulders of those who paved the way. I stand on the shoulders of Dr. King, Frederick Douglass, Susan B. Anthony, and so many others. They fought for freedom and for justice and rallied against inequality so that people like me, people like you, could realize the American dream. Thanks to them, a Black woman, the granddaughter of a sharecropper, rose above her circumstances and became the first woman mayor of the city of Rochester. And as mayor, I know their work is not done. I saw it here when a swastika was put on your building. The fight for equality and against injustice is far from over. Poverty is perhaps the greatest injustice facing Rochester. Half of our children in our city suffer from that injustice. They have parents who work hard but feel like they can't get ahead. They're victims to declining school and neighborhoods. We have young people in our neighborhoods who are angry and feel like they have lost hope. Too many of our young people are continuing to die on our streets. We have a responsibility to those children to create a Rochester where anyone who's willing to work hard can make it. Where anyone who tries hard enough can get a job and earn enough money to support their family. Where anyone who wants to better their life for the next generation can make it happen. We still have a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of battles to fight. But we're not fighting alone. Just like Dr. King, we're fighting together. And like Dr. King, we must embrace the spirit of those who came before us, who must stand on the shoulders of our predecessors. We must stand strong so that the next generation understands that we are fighting for them. I must say, it was a fight worth fighting for Dr. King. And I believe it was a fight worth fighting for Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass. It is still a fight that's worth fighting for equality and justice. Dr. King once said, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Last year, and I'm going to divert for a minute, I had the opportunity to go to Israel and to visit Yad Vashem. And I was standing in the memorial, and there's a part where you walk in, and it's completely dark. And you walk through this path, and the only thing that you hear are the names of young people that lost their lives during the Holocaust. And you realize that an entire generation was trying to be wiped out because of who they were. Same thing happened here in the United States. And here in 2017, we are still having the same discussion among each other and among our friends. For a long time, people were silent. We can no longer be silent about this type of behavior because our children are watching. What Dr. King and his and the people that supported him wanted for the next generation was us not to have to go through the same things that they went through. For us not to have to fight the same battles that they fought. But here we are, having the same discussion, fighting the same battle, some 50 years later. But I truly believe that every young person in this room can change that. Every young person in this room can say that it starts with me. I'm not going to use hurtful words. I'm going to reach across the aisles to someone that I do not know. Someone that may not look like me, may not have the same sexual preference as me, because you know what, at the end of the day, we're all part of the same human race. No matter what our skin color is, no matter where we came from, we have an obligation to each other. I hope that you feel the need to join us as we work together in this fight. Now, I know that the students have some questions for me, and I'll take a few questions when you come up to the microphone. But I truly want to implore to each and every one of you, change starts with you. In the social media age today, it is so easy to put things on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, words that will live forever. It is easy to tear somebody down instead of building them up. You don't have to be that way. You can choose to be different, and you can choose to lead by example. I know that it's difficult because of technology and everything is about instant gratification. I'm mad at her right now, and so I'm going to do this. I'm mad at him right now, so I'm going to do this. Never giving it a second thought. Take a step back. Recognize that words matter. Recognize that this is your country. You will lead it one day. You will sit as a town supervisor, or maybe even the mayor or the governor of the state of New York. Whatever your dream is, realize that today and the things that you do today can impact your tomorrow. It can either tear a friend up, or it can build, or it can tear them down. Be a part of the change that you want to see in your town, in your city, in your state. Because you don't just have an obligation to your peers. You have an obligation to the next generation. Thank you. To the microphone and ask questions?
So our students from the Black Student Union as well as the Mosaic Club have composed some questions for Mayor Warren. So if you have some of those questions, please come down the aisles to ask, and you have an opportunity to ask other questions following those questions.
What can we as teenagers do to address modern day segregation?
I think that you can address it by one of the big things when I was in high school. You gravitate to people that you know, that you feel most comfortable with. And so I would say that that you go and sit at a table during lunch of someone or people from a different race, a different background. And just that one gesture of getting to know people one-on-one and talking about some of the concerns or things that you may be curious about. When I was in law school, I had a friend who was Italian. There was an incident that happened when I was president of the Black Law Students Association, and her and I went out for a walk, and she said, I want to talk to you about this, and I want to get your insight as to why you feel this way. And then I'll tell you why I feel the way that I feel. And I think that for me, it was a learning experience. Because a lot of times things happen. A gesture is made or something is said, and you don't really know why it bothers the individual. And it may be something very, very subtle, but it really crushes and goes to the very core. In that situation, there was an incident that happened with the Black law students, and we went to our Student Bar Association, and when we walked in, they gathered in a corner, and it just happened to be an all-Caucasian Student Bar Association, and then they came back and they really didn't want to address our concerns. And she was in the room, one of the members, and taking the time to really understand my perspective on that, and me being able to hear hers, was a way that we built a lifelong friendship. And so I would say to students, make sure that if there's issues, that you don't let it fester. If you're curious about something, take an individual to the side and you talk. And you realize that it's not that bad. And you get to understand that person's point of view. And there will be times when you'll just agree to disagree on the issue. But at least you've taken the time to learn each other's point of view. Yes.
What can teenagers do, in your opinion, to improve community relations with the police?
I think that first, there is a lack of respect for authority. And when I say that, it is you respect the badge. And there are times when you are right, and you wonder why did they stop me? Why did they do this? Why, and you want to argue that point. But that is not necessarily the time that you should argue that point. If they ask for your ID, you pull it out and you give them ID. And then after they go through their systematic checks and you say, you know what, officer, I want to know why you stopped me. And you respect the position first. I think that mutual respect on both sides is also warranted. You want officers to approach in the right way. You want them to talk to the community in the right way. But I have seen and experienced times when, an officer will walk up and they will get cursed out. And, that's not the right way to behave. Even when you are right, there are times when you have to take down. The other thing I think that we should do is we need to talk more. There are issues facing this generation that is different from issues that face mine. And therefore, being able to pull together a group of young people and sit in a room and talk about how you're treated, how you're talked to, what your rights are and other things with officers, and telling them exactly how you feel is also something that I believe is warranted. That's why I really support organizations like Teen Empowerment that give our young people that space to have that discussion with officers and let them know how they feel. We also bring young people into our academy class so that they can talk to them, so that when they go on the streets, they can realize that a lot of the stereotypes are not true. There are really mostly good people that live in a community. But I would say that it first starts with having a discussion, but also respecting the position.
Thank you.
today, and my question is, did you experience a diverse teaching staff at Bosa Magnet? Also, how did your teachers influence your success in leadership, and did you ever feel you couldn't relate to your teachers due to race?
We had a great teaching staff at Rochester Magnet, and I think that we had a great teaching staff because we had a great leader. Our principal was very inclusive, and many of them grew up, or they were there for 10, 15, 20 years together. And so I didn't necessarily experience any issues with our teachers there. I can tell you that I wasn't necessarily the best student. I wasn't always kind, but I always knew that my teachers cared. And the reason why, teachers go into this profession is because they care about the next generation. And it's not just a job for them. You choose to do this type of work. It's a choice. And so they choose to deal with the issues that come along with it. And I think that, especially at Wilson, we had some challenges with some students, and I can't say that I wasn't one of them. But I knew that all of them cared about my future. And when I was getting off track, they would bring me back. They would sit down with me and talk to me, and they would tell me the things that I did not want to hear. But I can tell you, had it not been for them and a gentleman who was the vice principal at the time, Dr. Bless Thomas, I would have been on a completely different path. And the one thing that he said to me was, don't become a victim of your circumstance. And so what do I mean by that? He said, you're smart, you're beautiful, you want to be a lawyer. Why are you acting this way? Because what you do today will impact if you can become that lawyer. And I never thought about that. I'm angry now. My home situation is not the greatest now. I don't care about 20 years from now, at that point in time in my mindset. But what he did was bring it home for me to say, it matters now. Don't let that anger and what you're going through with your parents or with your friends impact the dream you have for yourself tomorrow. And I can tell you that discussion there changed my entire life. Him taking out the time to really sit down with me and talk to me. And so I know that everybody has that one teacher or that one administrator that can get them under control when they go off the deep end. Listen to what they say. They're here for the reason of not just educating you, but also for loving you.
Again, thank you for coming in today. Some of our students are members of the Urban Suburban program. Should this program be expanded?
I love the Urban Suburban program, and I want to thank the superintendent and the residents of Brighton for many years. My cousin was a part of the Urban Suburban program as well. And I think that when you have challenges in a school district, every chance that we give our children to have a fighting chance in life is warranted. It's not the fact that you can receive a quality education and be in a school district that is outside of your normal school district, I think is a great thing. And I commend your parents for signing you up, because I know that every parent wants what's most, 90% of parents want what's best for their students and what's best for their children. And so being able to come to a school like this or other schools in the suburbs is something that we truly need, but we also need to improve our schools so that they perform at a level that they need to perform at, and so that you have choices and options when it comes down to educating your child. You only get one chance to get it right. We want to make sure that every child has the same equal chance at having a successful life. So I agree with the urban suburban program and thankful to Brighton and other districts that allow our students to come here.
What can suburban teenagers do to create connections with teenagers living in the city of Rochester?
Well, you have them here. I would think you can do partnerships like, going and visiting a city school, having some of those city school students come and spend a day or so here. And one of the things that, we're talking about on a level, a national level or a local level is a student congress where we have students from all over the county be able to come and sit at a table and talk about some of the issues that facing not just suburban students but urban students as well. And so I think that now it's just really reaching out to other schools, reaching out to those students that come here from the city of Rochester as urban suburban students, not making them feel like outsiders, but inviting them in and say you're part of our school and part of our community now. I think that that's very, very important. Attending and supporting different city community events as well that the students are putting on, and going to the sporting events and things like that. Thank you.
How do we bridge the gap? How do we bridge the social gaps between affluent and less affluent communities?
I think that you bridge the gap by first recognizing that there's an issue, and that there is. I often say that you can live in Rochester all your life and never see poverty, because poverty in the city of Rochester is so very concentrated. You either drive through it, or you drive above it, or over it, and you never really recognize it because you really don't know what it looks like for a lot of people. Recognizing and being able to acknowledge that there are people in our community, a lot of people in our community, that don't have the same access to education, don't have the same access to jobs, don't have the same access to resources as other people. And then working to not just bring equality, but to bring what we call equity. What I may need is different from what you need. And you have to recognize those differences and be willing to make the sacrifices to give those individuals what they need to be successful. We can no longer sweep things under the rug and act like they don't exist. Because one day it will come to your doorstep skin to skin. And that's literally what we're seeing now in many ways in the United States of America. When I was in law school, 9/11 happened. And I know that all of you, and I know that the town supervisor, everybody remembers where they were when 9/11 happened. We just happened to have a student in our classroom that was from Iran. And, we were all in shock. And we were crying. And, everybody, how could this happen? How could they do this? And she looked around the room. She said, I've been dealing with this all my life. I look out my school window, and I see bombs going off. And I see my friends and my family members getting blown up and shot at. I've been dealing with this all my life. And so now, the United States of America is starting to see what has played out in many other countries, playing out on their own soil. One day it will hit you skin to skin, and you will no longer be able to deny what's happening to many citizens that live in your community and those that do not. And so, as Dr. Martin Luther King said, you remember the silence of your friends. Now is the time not to be silent. You bridge the gap by first acknowledging, and second, by doing something about it. Thank you. I hope we will not be having the same conversation 4 years from now. But if this election has taught me anything, it is to really not take anything for granted and to look at, to be willing to acknowledge other people's points of view, and to be willing to come and sit at the table and talk about issues of concern that may not necessarily affect you, that may be different of opinion from yours. I don't know. It's too early for me to say what will happen. I can tell you that certain things that are happening around the boldness of disrespect about race, religious, ethnicity, that people are feeling free to express right now, literally at times scares me, because I don't think that we are prepared really to deal with it in a real way. It is easier to go into retreat, into your own corner, than to come together and say, let's talk about this, and let's try to do something a little bit different. The tone will be set, I think, from the top in the federal government. I'm hopeful that our president will be able, not our current president, but the one that will be sworn in on January 20th, will be able to recognize and see some of the damage that has been done, and be willing to bring us together in unique ways to talk about it. But I don't know if we will be here in the same place 4 years from now. I hope not.
What are your thoughts on the recent presidential election?
I just talked about it. I just talked about it. We live in a democratic society. It is the society that we live in. You go through a campaign and you talk about what you believe are the issues that will make people vote for you and the things that you want to do. And afterwards, the people decide. And the people have the majority, the people have spoken. And we have to live with the results. But I say that we cannot retreat. We cannot be silent when things are wrong. We have to be willing to speak up. I was one that really supported Hillary Clinton and wanted her to be the next president. But I recognize that my candidate lost. And that doesn't mean that I don't work with the one that won, because I truly believe that you have to be willing to come and sit at the table and talk to and share your points of view with this individual, rather they want to hear it or not. You cannot say or assume that they know what's impacting you or your city or your community, and you hope that they listen. I think that we have some challenging days ahead, but we cannot just sit down and be silent about issues, but be willing to work together to change them. Our generations that are coming behind us will hold us accountable for what we do right now, today, and what we don't do. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to make a lasting impact and change things for the better on behalf of all of Americans.
Many students are concerned about the current racial divisions in communities across the United States, particularly as related to protests against the police forces or policing tactics in some places. How can we construct meaningful and productive dialogue around organizations such as Black Lives Matter?
So I think that Black Lives Matter in an organization talking about specifically police brutality, and rather we want to acknowledge that it exists or not. certain things that have happened are real. You know, for many African Americans, I'll say this. One of the things that we suffer from, and I'll say this, and I want you to understand what I mean. Many times people tell us, get over it. Slavery happened 200 years ago. Why are you still talking about it? And you should just get over it. You know, I didn't do it. And, you know, so I don't understand why it is still a problem for you. And I would say to them, and some of my friends, and we talk about this, and I would say to them, what do you mean? The remnants of slavery still affect us today. The remnants of what happened during Jim Crow still affect us today. When we look at the Constitution that we love and that we all stand on, we know and recognize that for many of us, it wasn't written for us. We all stand and we pledge allegiance to the flag. But at that point in time, years ago, it wasn't a flag for all of us. And so today, when you see the words and the attitudes of some people that know what your ancestors have been through and are not willing to acknowledge the struggle, not willing to acknowledge the pain, how can you care about me? It's the same thing as I, talked about when I had the privilege of going to Israel. You cannot say to the Jewish community, forget about the Holocaust. It happened. It was real. And you have to acknowledge it in order to really want to do something about it. It's the same thing with slavery. You have to acknowledge that it happened in order to really move forward and say, let's do something about this. So I said all of that to say this. When I talk about change starting with you and your attitude and how you deal with one another, it does. Because reaching across the aisle and understanding someone's history, their plight, their ancestors' plight, is the first step in understanding who they are. We talk about the remnants of slavery. What do I mean? Well, how housing was built in our community, redlining, how loans are given out to some people in our community. Still, you have the remnants of oppression today that we can't deny. So I want you to see me for who I am, but I also want you to see me for what I am. Don't deny me part of my history, just like it's not okay for me to deny anyone part of theirs. Once we get past that, I think that we will be better off as a society, because you can't take it away. It happened. Let's no longer deny that it happened. And let's work together to build up a better America, a better Rochester, a better Brighton, because it happened. Thank you.
How will you spend your Martin Luther King Day?
I will spend my Martin Luther King at the Martin Luther King celebration. They have a community-wide celebration at the Eastman School of Music. I believe it's at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then I will be going over to the University of Rochester and doing a speech for SEIU 1199. And then I will be spending time with my 6-year-old daughter and telling her about the sacrifices that was made and, talking to her about Dr. Martin Luther King. So that's how I'll be spending my day.
I just want to quickly thank Mayor Warren for visiting us today and being so willing to ask or answer all of our questions. We're running a little bit short on time, but we have a very quick announcement by Mrs. Schunker.
Thank you, Dr. Warren. That was fabulous. To continue these ideas, next Thursday night at 5:30 p.m. on the steps outside of our theater, Brighton High School, so far the only high school in the Rochester area listed as a brave space on the National Registry, will participate in the Ghostlight Project. So please find out about it at theghostlightproject.com. BSU, Mosaic Club, Interact, Friends of Rachel, Drama Club, many, many others, GSA, we're all coming together to continue shining a light on the causes that are important to us. So please come join us.
On behalf of Black Student Union, we would like to present you with a token of our appreciation, recognizing you with the Truth in Action recognition, honoring Rosa Parks and MLK's commitment to social justice, education, and community building. We are hoping that this will become a school-wide award. With this gift, we are thanking you for being an inspiration to others.
Thank you.